Tried to have it at the Great
Okay.
Town Park.
Ready?
All right, I'll call to order the Monday, June 24th meeting of the Oregon City Planning Commission. First item on the agenda is any public comments on items that are not on our agenda. Any members of the public wishing to speak on anything not on our agenda? Okay, not seeing any. We'll move on to item 3A, which is a public hearing on a public safety building GLUA-19-0001 is the land use application. And I have a wonderful script that I get to read. We have a hearing tonight, a public hearing on a land use application scheduled tonight. Our role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from those laws or codes. Members of the Planning Commission are to be unbiased. Before the start of the hearing, I will ask the commissioners whether they have any potential conflicts, such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the commissioners have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any commissioner about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which is contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown in the chart on the wall over there. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city can notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they're not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the City Commission or the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. And now we will open the record, the public record for Oregon City file number GLUA-19-0001, CI-19-0001, CU-19-0001, SP-19-0037, VAR 19-0002 and VAR 19-003 for property at 1232 Lena Avenue and 698 Warner Parrott Road. And wow, where are my reading glasses? Sorry about that. Okay, at this time, we will ask all of the commissioners whether they have any ex parte conflicts of interest, bias, or other statement to declare, and if they have visited the site. Commissioner Mahoney.
I visited the site. I got pulled over last week. Does that count?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I don't see it here, so I guess I'll let that slide.
Okay. And no,
I promise to let it slide.
no ex parte contacts?
No. Well, no.
Well. Okay, Commissioner Stoll.
No ex
ex parte contact. I visited the site yesterday.
Okay. Commissioner Guile?
Bob stole my thunder on that comment, but could you repeat what you just read? Because I was reading the staff report. No, actually,
No,
I've been there.
Here.
Actually, yeah, really, I've been there many times for National Night Out, and so I'm familiar with the area, but no ex parte contact. And I've not gotten any speeding tickets lately.
Okay. Commissioner Schlagenhofer?
No ex parte contact, and I've been by it many times, but I did not visit recently.
Commissioner Gage?
No ex parte contact, and I've been by many times, but not recently as well.
I have no ex parte contacts, and I've been by numerous times, including recently. Does any member of the audience wish to question or challenge any of the commissioners on the statements they've made? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the planning staff report.
Oh, good, it's a movie.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell.
Let's bring the popcorn.
Stay away.
Turn on the lighting so hopefully you all can see that better when it comes on.
Hey, I got it. You must have personally fixed it for me.
There we go.
There we go.
So thank you, Chair Mitchell. My name is Kelly Reed. I'm a planner with the Oregon City Community Development Department. And I'm here to give you a brief staff report on this request. I'm not going to reread those file numbers again because you've already read them. In summary, the request includes a code interpretation to consider a police station to be similar, and a similar use to a fire station. Fire station is a conditional use in the institutional zone. Police station is not listed at all in the institutional zone under permitted, conditional, or prohibited uses. Also a conditional use for a police station if that similar use determination is made, along with site plan design review for a almost 34,000 square foot building that would hold a police station, municipal court, and new commission chambers, a public plaza, and 2 new parking lots. And that's site plan design review includes 2 variance requests, one for building placement and building frontage, and one for building design standards. So the subject site is about 8 acres. It's located on the corner of Warner Parrott Road and Lynn Avenue in the Rivercrest neighborhood. And the zoning of the site, it's in the institutional zone, surrounded by mostly residential uses, single family and multifamily, and then a little bit of mixed use corridor zoning across the street where the Plaid Pantry building is. The site currently contains about a 42,000 square foot school building, Mount Pleasant School, which was built in 1929 with later additions on the north and south ends. An annex building that was built in the 1960s is currently used as community development offices as of last year. As part of that community development move into that building, a zone change of the property was approved through this commission, and that was from a residential zone to the institutional zone. What came with that zone change is a trip cap, meaning the traffic generation for the overall site was capped at the level of the previous school use traffic generation. And so that analysis was all done through that zone change, and that cap remains on the property until it is lifted. Let's see. So first, I'll talk about the code interpretation. As I said, our code is silent on police stations in the institutional zone. However, under conditional uses in the institutional zone, we have fire stations listed. So the applicant has requested that police stations be considered similar to a fire station. I will note that in the code amendments, which are up for second reading at the city commission next month, one of the amendments would be to add police station as a conditional use in the institutional zone. So if the timing of this application were a little different, then this request might not have to be made. What the applicant has provided as support for this code interpretation is that a police station is similar to a fire station in that they both include emergency response, storage of emergency vehicles, 24-hour operation. They both include office space and secured spaces, and they have similar impacts such as noise. And staff supports the interpretation to consider this a conditional use. And as a conditional use, the proposal is required to meet a set of criteria, including that the characteristics of the site are suitable for the proposed use, that the proposal complies with Chapter 1204, which is our chapter on streets, sidewalks, and public places, that the proposal won't alter the character of the surrounding area in a way that limits the uses of the surrounding area, and that it satisfies the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. And my written staff report goes into detail about how this proposal meets all this criteria, so I'm not going to go into it now unless there are questions after. But at a minimum, I will describe what is proposed and maybe what the impacts, what some of the impacts are. So the police station, the building is made up of office space, evidence storage space, space for suspect interviews, of course, the court offices, and the commission chambers. The applicant has indicated that there won't be any holding cells or jail cells in the building. The municipal court will be 113 seat room, so larger than this one. The court operates 2 days a week. And of course, the commission chambers will be used in the evenings mostly, 2 times a week on average. So the building will be a 24-hour building. Mostly at night, only patrol officers will be there. And then the traffic impacts are minimal according to the traffic study that was submitted and reviewed by our consultant. The traffic generation falls underneath the trip cap, so they're well within that limit. And we have a little bit of discussion in the written staff report about the traffic on Lynn Avenue related to Gardner Middle School, and some findings about, how that might affect or be affected by the traffic generated by this use. The traffic study doesn't seem to indicate that there will be a problem there, but we do have a condition of approval that the school zone on Lynn and Warner Parrott be modified because the Mount Pleasant School will no longer be operating, or it was operating as Merrillhurst School recently, so that will no longer be operating, of course. So the Gardner Middle School, however, will be. And so the school zone will change from a 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. to a when children are present or when lights are flashing. So that'll be slightly modified. And the site plan here, again, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but we've got the building here facing Lynn Avenue. There's a parking lot on the north side that is a secured parking lot for fleet vehicles and employees, and there's an entrance to that from Lynn Avenue, and that'll be gated. There is a public open space along Lynn Avenue as well, with about a 4,000 square foot plaza, hardscape and landscaped, and then a 11,000 and change square foot lawn, just open lawn area. And a public parking lot on the south side of the building with 72 spaces will be accessed from Warner Parrott Road The existing driveway for the Community Development Department will be widened to a two-way traffic driveway to access that lot. And a second driveway will be added here that will be connected to both parking lots. And I do want to mention that the demolition of the existing school building has already been approved through a separate type 1 review. And so a slightly larger zoomed out view of the site, you can see the surroundings and the existing kind of open space field area that will remain. Along with, the applicant is proposing this east-west pathway connection, starting here on the Lynn Avenue sidewalk, which the proposal is to widen that sidewalk to 8 feet, add a planter strip with street trees, and then this walkway that goes east-west will come along the south edge of the building and then end at the field. There is an unimproved right-of-way here, Marshall Street, that path will eventually connect to. So we have a condition of approval in the staff report that any future development on this property would require that extension, but for now it will just end at the field. There's also a north-south pathway from Warner Parrott that connects up to that pathway. And of course, there are lots of other pedestrian walkways around the site. This dash line right here, I want to point out, that is the expected boundary of the future roundabout at Lynn, Warner, Milne, Warner, Parrott, Leland Road intersection. So with that roundabout, we expect that this parking lot, the existing parking lot that is on the south side of the community development building, will be lost. And so we've taken that into account doing our analysis of parking on the site and of other various standards. So we've done the analysis based on no roundabout and based on after the roundabout is installed to make sure that the proposal will still comply with all of our standards after that occurs. We don't have a schedule for that project, so we don't know exactly when it will happen, but we've anticipated that it will. Okay. And so most of the site plan design review criteria would be a type 2 review, a staff level review, so I won't go into a lot of that in detail. But the variances are, of course, planning commission level decisions. And so I'll talk a little bit more in detail about the variances. So the first one is related to building frontage on Lynn Avenue. So the code requirement is that sites with 100 feet or more of frontage, at least 60% of the site frontage width shall be occupied by buildings placed within 5 feet of the property line. Now, the applicant has gained a greater setback than 5 feet through the use of pedestrian elements in front of the building, so their setback's going to be about 18 feet, but that 60% of building frontage is not met. And the applicant's explanation for that is that the east-west orientation of the building allows for more daylighting and less energy use, that there are security reasons for that, and that it provides a separation between the public and private areas of the site. So just to explain what the standard requires, this is the Lynn Avenue frontage, and the building frontage right here, that's the proposed new building. It's about give or take 100 feet of frontage, and then the existing community development building right there. So adding those two together does not reach that 60% requirement. We do take into account the plaza area. So that adds a significant frontage of public open space, which doesn't meet the letter of the code, but we're considering that within the overall scheme. And then also this existing parking lot area between the community development building and all of the new proposed development does leave room for potential future buildings, city facilities. While there's no plan for that, we know that is a future possibility. And so if that were to occur, then this site would be coming closer to that, meeting that standard by adding more building frontage along the street. And so the criteria for variances, just to summarize it, is that it won't impact neighboring properties, that it's the minimum variance that is required, that granting the variance would equal or exceed the purpose of the standard, that any impacts are mitigated, that there are no practical alternatives to the variance, and that it meets our comprehensive plan. So the staff report includes a lot of findings about this variance, and again, I don't have time to get into them. But mainly it is that the plaza area serves as mitigation, and that the potential future development on site, gives a rationale for the applicant being able to potentially meet this, more closely meet the standard in the future. So the second variance,
Quick question, did you infer earlier, before you started, that all these variances wouldn't be an issue once the code gets changed in maybe the next month?
no, that's the code interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Just wanted to be
variances,
clear.
some of this code is proposed to change in the code amendments, but I don't think that it would have changed in a way that would make their proposal not require variance.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So variance related to building design, so there are 5 design standards that the applicant is requesting a variance to. That's that the most architecturally significant facade be oriented toward the street. So in this case, it is actually facing south and not facing Lynn Avenue. And so the rest are related to building articulation, wall articulation, and then detail of building materials and changes in colors and textures, and avoiding the use of long blank walls. And so here's a rendering of the building. So the right side of that photo here, that's facing Lynn Avenue. And then the larger bank of windows faces south towards the plaza. And so we consider this the most architecturally significant facade. This is the building elevation drawing of the Lynn Avenue facade, the front facade. The transparency requirements, so windows and doors, is 60% of the length of this facade. So and that's at the pedestrian level. So currently, if you measure it kind of at the pedestrian level, we've got about 31% transparency. The rear side of the building has long sections of blank wall. Those arrows are a little bit high, but there's some sections of blank wall on the south facade as well. And then this shows where the articulation and modulation standards aren't met. So the projections and recessions of the building or the architectural details are not quite meeting the letter of the code. So the applicant's rationale for these variances is that a lot of them are based on design decisions. This is a modern building, and it has a modern aesthetic. The entrance facing the plaza rather than the street is to provide guidance to visitors to draw them into the entry. There are security reasons for some of the transparency differences in some of the blank walls. And then, of course, the building layout, there are bathrooms and other rooms that aren't appropriate for windows on that front facade. And so adding windows to bathrooms is not something that the applicant wanted to do in order to meet transparency requirements. So we do have some recommended conditions of approval based on these variance requests. One is to increase as much as possible the transparency on the front facade. So if we go back to that front facade, We think that this window can be either extended downward to the pedestrian level or moved down to the pedestrian level in order to be able to count all this length as transparency. And then we also have, as much as possible, reducing some of these wall panel lengths in between the windows. So this is an all window, there's some wall panel in between window.
A quick question,
Yeah.
that skinny window, is there a reason it's up there, or is there a counter there? Or-
Yeah, so it's a conference room, and we've spoken with the applicant about the, the possibility of moving those down, and
Okay.
we've agreed on the condition of approval that that's
It's not a bathroom?
it's not ideal,
Okay.
but they're willing to do it in order to get closer to that transparency
Okay,
number. And, the reason behind that is kind of the criteria about the minimum variance being requested. So, we can grant variances, but we want to make sure that they're doing the maximum they possibly can to meet it. And then
Right.
we can,
but we're still being reasonable, we're not asking them to put a wall of windows in
Yeah.
front of toilets?
yeah.
Okay.
And then I think some of these wall panels are structural, so it's not clear if it's possible to reduce the size of those.
Yeah, you need some shear panels.
Right, but if it is possible, then that can be done as well.
Thank you.
On the basis of Dirk, so I had just written it down to ask you questions about this, but since
Mm-hmm.
he's asked, I know a lot of this in a police station depends on what's behind the wall and the
Right.
windows.
Mm-hmm.
And like even here at City Hall, I realize we have very few windows here, but they're normally covered like this. And so I thought, doesn't the transparency of the windows or whatever depend upon what they have planned in each of those locations? Are we privy to know what's gonna be behind that and why they're doing it this way?
Right, they submitted floor plans, so we know what is behind all of those windows. And so here, in this location, I believe is a restroom and a mechanical room, and this is a restroom as well. And so the condition of approval wouldn't require them to add windows in those locations.
Are they all bulletproof windows in that area? I mean,
I'll let them answer
thinking
that
having a
one.
meeting there and then somebody looking, oh, look, there they all are. But I mean, is there, what,
And can you see through them?
yeah,
Well,
Is it
we
just a
don't,
mirror?
the windows on a building, we do regulate that the glass can't be fully reflective. But if people want to put blinds and drapes on the
Yeah.
inside,
Like this.
we don't regulate that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. And then another recommended condition of approval is for some of these blank wall areas that the applicant add some sort of architectural interest. And in discussions with the applicant, we understand that can be in the form of changes to the actual building wall or elements that are not attached to the building, such as a planting trellis or something that just adds interest without affecting their building design. Okay, so apologies for this long staff report presentation, but we recommend approval with the conditions in the staff report, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for staff? No?
Is there a zone in the code that specifically does allow for a police station, or is it just completely absent from the code in general?
I see.
I don't think it's absent, maybe in mixed use.
Their code identifies police station with fire stations in all circumstances except for in the zoning designation. As far as it being an outright permitted use, I'm not quite certain, but I know that
Permitted
where,
or
yeah, it's
conditional?
almost always paired with the fire station, which is where the fire station connection in this code interpretation came from.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll move on then for 15-minute presentation from the applicant.
Please identify yourself.
Do you know how, so it's opening up in Explorer, how I get it to be full screen and
God, what a great picture.
see?
Water's high.
Beautiful photo, except for the.
I don't know if we have Adobe on this.
Look for those kind of things.
Oh, Really?
That's it. What you're just talking about.
Oh, jeez.
And here we go.
Presentation
What if
canceled.
I just say no enough
Why didn't you
times?
build your building?
Where's,
computer.
full screen?
Put that building somewhere on Mount Hood. What a beautiful spot.
It'll take a while to get there.
I, here, what's this one? Oh, how did I get that?
Doesn't that just make you go for a swim out there?
I don't know.
There we go.
Did they go, what,
This one.
no? They cleaned up.
Does that work now?
I don't think so.
What were we trying to do?
Well, they're working on the computer. I do have one more thing for you that I'd like to throw on the table as well.
Okay.
Don't need to pay attention.
Even work.
Condition number 54 identifies overhead utilities along property frontages going underground except for PGE high voltage lines. And I would have a friendly amendment to condition
It just
number
scrolls.
54.
I could give
The
you a
condition, the
mouse.
first line of the condition
Sorry.
currently reads, overhead utilities along all property frontages existing and new shall be placed underground, period. All existing overhead utility lines in vacated Warner Parrott Drive on city property shall be placed underground except for PGE high transmission
That
line.
first icon.
On that first, it goes on a little bit more detail, but on this first line, after overhead utilities along all frontages existing and new shall be placed underground, I would like to, proposing that the commission add to the conditions of approval or pay a fee in lieu. So then that provides an option for them to, provide the fee in lieu so that it gets paired with the roundabout project if it needs to be. So it's just providing some options. So you don't have to do all the utility work now and then wait and do the roundabout and all that utility work. You can pair it together if you need to. But they're still on the hook for it.
Can I ask, isn't it kind of strange that we put our own police department on hook for all these different things? I don't know, is it?
I appreciate that question, and that's a really good question, because I would remind the commission, I mean, they are an applicant like everybody else is an applicant, and the criteria is the same, just like everybody else. The interesting part is, through the conditional use, you do get to look at that use in a very specific way, but it is important that we hold everyone the same, because we will get the next applicant after this asking why they can't do the same thing.
But as a city government, I mean, did we do the same thing for this building here? Go through all the procedures, but it just seems that,
We did.
okay.
We,
It just seems like a government, something that's so important to our city livelihood and all that. we wouldn't do
It's
that.
kind of hard to ask our residents to go through this process and to take the conditions that everybody else has to do if we're not doing it ourselves.
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
and the purpose of the code is to implement the public's view of what our design urban aesthetic should be as well, in addition to holding
Okay.
ourselves accountable to the
Didn't know.
same standard. Yeah, great question, though. So if you have any questions about what that feels like during this review, please ask.
All right, gentlemen.
Okay, good evening, Planning Commission. I'm very happy to be here. We've got a lot of work into this project that basically started in January of 2014. There was a very involved public process that had to do with this building project that initially started out about the fee and how we were going to pay for this project. But in those conversations was also the site. What would you like to see at the site? And we spent almost a year in that process. And then subsequent, a lot more public input, hitting every neighborhood association, every neighborhood group, business group, chamber, anybody who would listen, and taking their feedback and incorporating that into the pictures you see. Some of the things that I'll point out, and I just thought of it kind of watching Kelly's presentation, had to do with what the public wanted to see on the site. We knew that the potential use for city government could be that someday they're going to outgrow this city hall, and it was a big enough site that we wanted to be able to leave that flexibility to the community in the future. It was important to us that you're trying to balance. We really wanted a building that did not look like a fortress. A lot of police departments look like fortresses. And generally, if you're going to the courts or the police department, you generally didn't have a good day. And so as much as we can minimize that for victims and people who are coming to get help, or just going to pay a ticket, that they're going to go to a place that seems welcoming and open. It also relates to how we like to police the community: openness, glass, transparency. Now, for staff in a police department, telling them that you want a lot of glass and transparency makes them a little nervous, because it's important for them to feel safe and secure while they're at work. So these were kind of challenges to how we were laying the building out with our design team on the space and the aesthetic of it. And one of the things that the public really said repeatedly, I thought they would really be concerned about the school. They all talked about that green space that you see that's there now where the ball fields are. They wanted us to keep as much of that as possible. So that kind of explains some of the orientation. So we put a ton of work into this. We've got a great design team. There's been a ton of public involvement, and we're really excited to be here before you tonight. So.
I'm John Pete. Would you please introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, I'm sorry. My name is Jim Band. I'm the police chief in Oregon City, and I live in Oregon City as well.
Thank you.
And I'm John Pete with FFA Architecture, and I live in Woodburn. And we also have a lot of our design team here. We'll introduce in a little bit. But as we go through, I'll go through and just kind of give a quick presentation of the design concept and how we arrived. So as Kelly mentioned, located centrally in the city, right at the intersection of Warner Parrott Road and Lynn, old school of Mount Pleasant School. And then it's also the current Planning Department and Community Development building located down here on the corridor. And it really sets up well being centrally located in the city, because the police department providing very quick response times throughout. Central location is pretty ideal from a planning perspective. And so with all our projects, and specifically this one, since there were so many stakeholders, we met early with all the community groups, police, the court staff, counselors, and neighborhood meetings, and really tried to get a sense of the goals and what this project wanted to be before we really even drew any lines, put pen to paper. And a couple of the ones that really stand out in this one was really this idea of the civic campus and the celebrating history and enhanced public amenities that they want to bring to it, as well as the warm, welcoming public experience piece and how we start to bring that into the facility. And so these were some of our initial design concept sketches. And as you look at kind of the diagram here on the left, you start to look at a building, and we really looked at ways to bring in light, carve out spaces to bring in green space and landscape, really open it up and make it transparent, and how we start, carving started to be a meaningful word in the process of how we start to create those spaces. And that's initial sketches here, and then the carving to foster a place for safety, wellness, and community really started to be that core that drove our design process. And with materials, we really started here with looking at Oregon City's history, and that idea and notion of being first founded on these basalt cliffs. And these cliffs, as they're kind of carved away, you start to see a lot of the texture in the material in that rock, and how those patterns start to work. And so we targeted the exterior of the building to start to represent that basalt and that texture and these patterns of striation, and look for materials to be able to do that. And then that idea of carving, as we carve in, create these public spaces, these connections, this openness, we wanted that to feel open, transparent. You start to see images up here on the right of we wanted to create spaces where people wanted to be, and those were the drivers of those spaces. And then when we look at our site plan, so here's Lynn, here's Warner Parrott, you start to see some of the unique elements of a police facility. So when I say unique, I mean, you really only have one in the whole city, and there's a big kind of public connection, public civic piece of it. There's also a secure component. So down here, we have our public parking that is for the courts buildings as well as police buildings, and then plaza. And we've positioned this, if I scroll down a little bit more, so the planning and community development offices are down here with the idea of that civic plaza or civic area, creating those shared connections on the public side. And then up on the north side is where we have our secure parking. So this would be fenced and secure for staff, but you start to see, there's a lot of site connections that happen with this building and really starting to create a public experience that is welcoming into the piece, as well as providing the secure parking for staff on the backside. And then as Jim mentioned, what we were really hearing from the community was this piece over here, leaving that open space, this park space, making that an amenity for the community, and then using the plaza, so our main entry right here on Lynn, as well as Plaza, providing that really open connection to the site. And then lastly, before I jump to the renderings, the planning for city growth and city, future city projects on the site was a big consideration, and that really led to creating this strong kind of public core where you could look at future city development here, or you could look at future city development here that would build on the infrastructure that's already in place on the property. And so this is the view from Lynn. So it's kind of walking, driving along Lynn Avenue, and it really starts to show the impact of that kind of main public plaza, as well as the transparency on the building, with that idea of how can we draw people into the site, get them off the street, get them in this plaza environment. As well as we popped up the courtroom and kind of this multi-purpose room in the center to also be that beacon that you see as you drive by and see through. And then as you start to get in so this is where you're standing in the plaza looking at the building, and you start to see the transparency Jim talked about of we're really seeing into those main community spaces in the building. This whole area really feels warm, welcoming, and so we're using cross-laminated timber for the interior of the building, so these interior spaces really have a warm, nice, inviting environment. And then you see the texture on the outside starting to hit back to our material concept of how can we create this texture and striations and next year that has this kind of more rugged rock type texture, and then we start to soften that as we bring people into the interior. And then zooming out for just a second to see the plaza, that's kind of that main entry plaza space. That history component really became important. So both a memorial to Robert Libke, as well as the history of the old school there, and finding ways to bring that history into the plaza. So we have a down view of kind of showing, we're looking at proposing a historical marker, commemorative marker to the old school structure that would be part of that community space out front that everyone would see.
And taking that, we want to take the window, if you recognize that from above the doorway, and literally take that and put that into here. It seemed people needed a relic, not an artistic interpretation, but I need a piece of that school there that I can always see, and that's kind of the most memorable aspect visually, I think, from Lynn Avenue of that school.
Yeah, and I think that hits on kind of our site plan concept, because a lot of times in a police facility, you park the car and are immediately walk to the lobby. And we really, from a site perspective, wanted people to park the car and transition through this lobby or this plaza area, be connection to the history of their community before they went to the facility. So overall, I'd really like to thank Kelly and staff. It's been a really good process to be a part of. So big picture, we agree with all of staff recommendations and the conditions of approval they're recommending. And we brought our project team. We have our civil engineers, landscape team here if there's any questions. But with that, we can turn it over to questions in the public process.
Had a couple, if that's okay. The crosswalk on the northeast side, it looks like it's right in the middle of the driveway. Any safety concerns with that? Did it line up with the sidewalk on the other side, or why did it end up kind of in the middle of the driveway there? Were you talking about?
I
On the side
can
of the
answer
dri- yeah, the
that
top
if you don't mind.
crosswalk
Top up there?
Or is that?
That's a mid-block crossing, and one of the conditions of approval is to remove that. That was recommended by the traffic engineers.
Okay.
So the one to the south would remain,
Right.
and that mid-block crossing would be removed.
Okay, good. All right, and then cross-laminated timber. When they first came up with that, were there some issues with that? Have those issues been solved? About
Yeah.
the cross-laminated timber?
Yes, it's a pretty incredible project or product. There's a huge track record
Right.
with the product, especially in Europe. So I mean, we're
Yeah.
bringing it over here, but I mean, we're using it on 3 essential facilities right now, and it meets all the requirements of a structural essential facility.
Okay. All right.
I have a question. we're all privy to this and we see all this, but a lot of people watching on television aren't. My first thought was in the public parking area. I was trying to look to see where there might be lights, because people coming to meetings in the evenings want to know if they're safe to get out to the cars. You should be by a police station, but I'm sure I looked at the front of the building on that last picture, and I didn't see anything on the front of the building except lighting from inside. Are there lights planned for out in the parking lot? Again, people watching television don't see that, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a very well-lit parking
Okay.
lot. We're meeting all of the city photometric requirements for the
Okay,
parking
cool.
lot.
In your, in the report that we got, there's a possible added in or right turn in, right turn out off of Lynn Avenue into the parking lot. It's not shown here, right?
Yeah, correct.
Where would that be if it comes to pass?
So that came about we almost looped that completely into this project, but we basically, in conversations with with Ms. Turway, we were talking about how the public can best access the police department as well as the community development building. And so that is something that we plan on looking at in the future. Easing how many people have to go through that intersection, if people can loop right in there as opposed to going through the intersection to come around. So that's why that was in there, is we wanted to dig into that, thought it seemed like a good idea. And so that's just something that for the future, as opposed to bringing that into this project, because we had so many moving pieces to get
Okay.
here.
Okay. And can you go back to the view of the front of the building?
Yes.
Yeah.
This one here, the plaza
Yes.
view.
So that, the door there on Lynn Avenue and the main door down at the other end there, do those lead into the same common area? Or have you got a security issue now because you got you got to have staff, two people for traffic going in and out, or is that leading into one common area?
There's a lot of different uses in this lobby. So the lobby is serving as a court lobby when court is in session. It's also serving as a police lobby when the police lobby is open. And then there's a pre-function space for evening council meetings and council and commission hearings and stuff that would be in there. So there's kind of 3 layers of this lobby. So this right portion here is the court lobby. And then this is kind of that main pre-function space. And then this is the police lobby. So it's all kind of the same lobby space, but they're based on the different functions and what's in use. They're controlled differently.
There's a wall and a door right here you can see.
Yeah, I see
And then
that.
the same thing here. So
Okay.
we'll be able to control, people will be able to go in, but then we'll be able to control how far they go into what space.
Okay. What other?
Can you go back up one more, to the layout? I'm sorry, 2 more. Where the secure entrance, off of Lynn, I think I can see how it is, but does a car have to stop on Lynn to wait for the gate to open, or is there space for a vehicle to pull in off the street while the gate opens?
Yeah, there's plenty of space for a vehicle to pull in and get all the way past the sidewalk before they have to stop.
Okay. And how many employees will be coming and going on an average 24-hour day?
So we have about 60 police employees with code enforcement, and then I think there's 5 or 6 court staff. But on a given day, it won't be those 60. There's 4 to 6 officers per shift. There's 3 shifts in the daytime. It'll obviously be a lot busier in the daytime than it will be at night. So I would say up to half of those people will be coming to and from. It might just be to come to go to court and then to go home.
Sure, but in terms of the employees, oh, I see what you're saying, traffic officers coming in for court and then.
Yeah. So an employee might come in on their day off, come in, change, go to court, and then they're there for an hour and leave.
Right.
And the traffic study was done, I think, on a court day, so they look at your busiest time.
That secure parking area there on the north, is that for employees? Is that for officers?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, and staff cars.
Okay, so public parking can only gain access to the site off of Warner Parrott.
Yes,
That's the only access.
yes.
So they gotta go down to the intersection, negotiate a right turn. And then when the roundabout gets improved, they'll have to negotiate the roundabout.
Yes.
And why was it not made available for access off Lynn Avenue, so you could have that plaza there protected.
So the right turn that we were talking about is what we're looking at potentially addressing that same issue on. We just wanted more time to look at that. And they would go into that parking lot right there, right there. We just needed some more time to look at that.
Oh,
and-
I see, okay.
Yeah.
Because access to the Community Development Office is really not, in my judgment, all that convenient for the public. I know I really gotta,
not now.
really gotta negotiate that baby when, you know, I gotta know where I'm going,
Yep.
so.
And that lowered, right where your cursor is, that driveway is widened as a part of this project, right? Yeah.
And then do the two parking lots connect, the planning parking lot and the, public parking? I see something
Yes.
right there.
Yeah.
That's a connection?
Yep,
Okay,
Vehicle connection or?
vehicle connection.
Oh, okay.
that makes it
Sorry
easier.
about that.
Yep.
What's that little offset right there for? Was that to get the driveway closer to the corner? Why is it jog to the left?
It's doing
there?
two things. We're preserving some trees in this
Existing
area,
trees?
as well as creating the right distance separation between these two access points going onto Warner Parent.
Okay. Is there gonna be a center turn lane for the people going east to be able to stop and turn? Or will the people have to stop behind them because they can't get out of the traffic lane?
Good point.
It looks like it comes with a narrow point there, so the people going east, it looks like they'll have to, there's not enough room to really pull into a median. I was just wondering if someone's coming the other way and there's a stream of cars, will they be blocking traffic eastbound?
I think on the second one, you can see that there is some
There's
space there,
room
but
there.
the first one, no.
Okay,
It's just not wide enough.
right. No way to widen that? Well, there is always a way to widen it.
That's a good distinction.
There's always a way, yeah. All right. I'll quit bugging you about it.
I do know that from going through this process and other processes, every action has an equal and opposite reaction in terms of other conversations that I've heard with traffic engineers. It is very much a science, and so a lot of these conversations, even the right turn lane one, that there's going to be a conversation about how all those things affect each other.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we will move on to public comments. Are there any representatives of represented, recognized neighborhood associations wishing to speak? Kelly, first off, do you have any cards?
I do not.
You do not. Okay, so is there anyone from a recognized neighborhood association wishing to speak? No. Okay. Pardon me.
I was going to fill out comments.
Okay.
Can I just?
And you're representing your neighborhood association?
Well,
Because it matters only in terms of how much time you're allowed.
I'm from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and so I'm proud of the city leaving as much playground area as they can for the time being, because they're going to be building on the Gardner site, and kids need a neighborhood place to play.
Okay, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Okay,
and
I'm
then make your
Rita
comments
Mills,
and then
and
turn in
I
the
came
card.
to the wrong meeting, so I stayed. I'm a representative at the CIC, and I got my Mondays mixed up. The only other thing that I'd like to comment on is that I would hope that there would be some salvage in the destruction of the old school. I have a friend who works very much with Habitat for Humanity. And if it would be possible to have a correlation perhaps between the Habitat for Humanity builders and the salvagers, it always bothers me to just see a building flattened. And particularly because the Habitat for Humanity uses used materials sometimes. So, anyway, thank you for letting me stay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, so at this time, we would move on to, pardon? Oh,
I'll fill out a card.
fill out a card.
Thank you.
Come on down.
Thank you. I'm Paul Edgar, Oregon City. I just wanted to thank everyone that's been involved in helping getting this thing through. It's been long overdue. I had some involvements long ago in trying to make something like this happen, and I appreciate everyone. I'm fully in agreement with this plan and with the amendments and that you guys are going to allow, whatever, to make it happen. If there's only one thing I would turn around, I think that you hit the nail on the head. It would be nice to have an entrance off of Lind Avenue where we could get into it. But I don't want to do anything that impacts negatively the financial figures that are put together, because those are delicate. I want them to go through, and anything that makes a roadblock to that, the financial side is problematic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, sir. Be sure and fill out a card. Come on, you don't have to first.
Okay.
And introduce yourself, please.
I'm George Izette. I live at 661 Warner Parent. I'm in the northwest corner, that L-shaped house up there. And just a few questions. It looks like we have a public egress there. It looks like it's in the actual building site, you know, in the green space. My question is that going to be, I've been maintaining it, but who puts gravel there? I mean, I've been doing it, but is the city supposed to maintain that? Or, you know, that's been a big question. I haven't been able to find out since I've been there.
As far as maintenance goes, we can find out and let you know, because I don't know the answer to that question, but when you fill out the card, make sure to put your contact info on it, and we can
Okay.
get back to you. Also, there is a condition of approval related to that easement, so it's a 30-foot wide easement that leads up north to the, essentially your driveway, which is unimproved right-of-way. Upon any future development on the site, that easement area would become a public street to connect up to Marshall.
Just so everybody is in the same boat here, can you show us?
Yes.
Pointer, show us
So-
on the map.
Because right now
what
it's
we're
a
talking about.
field, Marshall
So-
Street's down.
What you're
the
asking
street.
is, according to this, it looks like you'd suddenly become a dead-end street. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it looks like my easement is on their property now, so I'm just, because that's the only way I have to access my property, which is technically our driveway is Marshall Street, and it's just a grassy field that's been closed off. I just am concerned it's eventually going to become a total through street there, and then we'll lose our privacy, the reason we moved there. That was my,
I'm kind of at a loss.
Yeah.
Is there a gate there right now in the fence?
no, they're right now on the very west
This
side.
gravel, right
Yeah.
here.
And right there, it's all gravel, and then when you get to the west side of my property where there's the other lot, that's all grass, it's all overgrown, that's not a street.
So-
And then there's 3 logs there that block motorized vehicles from going
Right,
through there.
so no vehicles use this. This is Marshall Street, though, unimproved right-of-way. And this is the gravel driveway from Warner Parrott that provides access to your property. And so in order to meet some of the standards in our code related to block lengths and street connectivity, this gravel driveway in the future would become a public right-of-way.
It would become what? Right.
Public right-of-way, a local street connection, and then as would Marshall Street if any of the land along Marshall Street is developed with residential, you know, it's residential zone. So street improvements on Marshall would be required if that were to happen.
So the
just to
person
give
who
some
built there
context.
would have to improve.
Right,
Okay, so my question is that's my only driveway. I mean, a lot of people up front, they've got access from Warner Parrott, but they'll still, a lot of times they'll come back there and access from the back. I'm like, it kind of feels like they're coming in your yard and your driveway, and I'm just not sure. I haven't got a clear answer. I've been told that Elmer, who used to live there, owned it, and he didn't, and who needs to maintain it? That's my biggest question.
well, we can answer the maintenance question sometime after the meeting.
Okay.
But this is, there is a 30-foot wide public access easement for your benefit. You know, it was granted for you, for the needs of your property.
So is it just for my property then?
I believe it's for, both of these.
Yeah, so it's both okay, for those two sets. Okay, that
Yeah,
answers
I
the
mean, we can send you the easement language as well.
Okay, and then the other last question is the lighting in the parking lots. Is there gonna be much light pollution, or what's the city's, because it's kind of private over there now, we just didn't want lights blaring.
Maybe that's something that the applicant can touch on when they come back up,
Okay,
because they'll be coming back up. They'll talk about that.
Be no floodlights.
There is a limitation on how much light can spill off of this property, and they can address it a little more technically. So Kelly, just so I make sure we're clear here, as a part of this application, there is no proposed change to driveway, Marshall Street?
That's correct.
Anything? Okay.
okay. And then if there are any trees, you can address whether you're gonna plant any trees along the west side of the property, or any kind of landscaping, whoever's,
Okay.
or I'm not fill out the card down.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, be sure and fill out a card. You know, after you're done.
Okay, my name is Gloria Singletary and I live on Donald Street. So
Which
yours,
one's Donald?
the,
It's north of you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Do you want to go to that picture where the green?
Up here?
Yes.
Okay.
The parking, your secure parking is going to be behind our lot. So I was wondering about the lighting over there. What
Did
the
you have a
street
comment about it, or you just
I
want
want
to
to know
hear
where
more
the
about
street
it?
lighting is going to be over there. Is it going to
Okay.
shine onto our property?
Okay.
That's one question, and another one is the drain. Where is the drain pipe going?
I can speak to that.
Okay.
So currently there's, this site does not have a stormwater connection to the city system. Your street does. And so the stormwater solution, and the applicant might be able to describe this as well, I think civil engineers here. But the site will be connected to the city system via the pipe that serves your property. And in order to keep the flow from being too much for that smaller pipe, what the police have proposed is to build an underground storage detention tank to detain the stormwater from the site along with the stormwater from your area, and then put it into the pipe, so that it's slowly released into that pipe at the same flow rate as today. So they're they're gonna be detaining stormwater from the property and from the neighborhood, partially the neighborhood, if that makes sense.
No. Does it mean a pipe is gonna go into her?
So there's a current easement, there's no, as far as I know, no off-site changes to the stormwater system, it's all on-site. And your drainage it should all be the same conditions as today.
Our drainage, it comes down Donald Street. There's a path between the apartments and our lot, and then it goes right straight across the schoolyard.
Yes, there's a.
So you're
easement
saying
right here.
that the drain is going to go into that pipe that's going across the schoolyard?
I believe that is the pipe that would be connected to, but there will be a new underground storage detention tank
A
for.
larger pipe and
I'm sorry?
a larger drain going through there?
The underground, the storage tank is being oversized in order to allow the pipe size to stay the same,
And then it'll be drained
the same way it is today.
the same way it is, which goes over to Marshall, right? Okay, as long as it doesn't back up into Donald Street. We've had that problem before and the city had to take care of that years ago, so that's our concern.
I would imagine that if a school with lots of kids probably would have less drainage than a police department. I don't know. Is that possible? I don't know. But an underground storage for it sounds wise.
No, this is stormwater, not sewer.
Stormwater, right.
Oh, excuse me then.
Quick question on that. Was it on Marshall Street or was that on Donald Street, the pipe?
So let me see if I can find, so you see that,
Line.
that is a sewer,
Oh, there it
an
is.
easement, so the pipe, comes down here, down this pathway that, you mentioned, and then across the site, and then over to Marshall.
And that's where the stormwater pipe's gonna be going?
It is already there.
But that's the one that's already
So
there.
this site's just gonna tap into it because it currently,
Okay,
the
just making sure it's not
school's
going through someone's yard.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was
Okay.
wondering.
No, right, no. So you're gonna tap into that, and then it'll go on from that, not down the other way.
That's
And
my
where's
understanding.
where's the storage tank at?
It would be underneath the secure parking lot.
Okay.
Oh, underneath the secure parking lot?
Yeah,
Not
so
out in the
It
field?
would, the tank is here, and then it's connected to the pipe, and it controls the flow rate of the water into the pipe.
How many days does it have to rain before it fills that tank?
It's been designed to our standards for,
Okay.
whatever storm, I don't,
The
I
100-year
can't speak
floods.
to our standards, I'm not the
Okay.
civil engineer, but,
Right.
it's been designed to meet it.
All right, and if it overflows, where would it go?
Can the applicant potentially speak to that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
thank you very much. Any other public comment? Okay, now we'll have the applicant rebuttal time.
Or explanation time.
Yeah, explanation on a few of those issues. Whoever'd like to come up and reintroduce yourselves, please.
So we can start with stormwater. I'm Nathan Patterson, I'm from Milwaukee. So I could just briefly explain the stormwater approach to the project. The existing school, as Kelly mentioned, does not have a stormwater connection. It actually goes through a dry well, so it's all infiltrated. The geotechnical report did not suggest that for the proposed improvements, so we're left trying to find a location to connect to storm. There is no storm main in Lynn Avenue and the basin to the south. We were told by city staff that was not appropriate for the project based on the basin network in the city. So we are connecting to the line to the northwest. And the way that the detention works, because there is a recognized issue with that line. So typically, the design standards require you to detain flows from pre-development conditions to post-development conditions. In this case, that was not enough because we would still be adding flows to that line. So as Kelly mentioned, we're actually proposing, this is based on city staff recommendation as well, to intercept along that line and detain flows from upstream, so above Donald, where the flows are coming in, as well as from the site. So everything is designed to not increase flows into the existing pipe. So we're doing that by detaining both the on-site impervious area as well as some of the upstream in order to make that have no greater impact downstream. And that's done using underground chambers. And I'm forgetting the design storm at this point, but it is a higher design storm. It's either the 50-year or the 100-year that's designed to. And so that is above and beyond what you would typically design for development because of the issues in the existing line. And to your question about the overflow, if it does overflow, it would be overflowing at that extreme 50-year or 100-year event. And so then it would be going over into that line undetained at that point because the detention would be full.
With an existing building there and all the impervious surfaces for parking for the school, we have a huge field. Do you expect a higher stormwater flow than usual, even though pretty much the impervious surfaces are the same?
Right, so the impervious area in the existing school is all going to a dry well, so it's actually not connected to that line. So it's all just being infiltrated into the ground.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, what's happening to that existing dry well?
It'll need to be abandoned.
Where's
for the
that at?
DEQ. It's right underneath the middle of the proposed building.
Okay. And then one last question, if I could just remember what it was. Parking parking lot, how much of that is any permeable pavers, any kind of drainage going through that concrete, or is it all going to run down there like a river when it rains?
It's all impervious pavement, and it
It's all
goes through
impervious.
treatment facilities and then to the detention facility.
Okay.
And it's no longer 50 or 100 years, now 20 years, everything. You have these huge downpours.
Yeah, getting worse, yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Did you have any comment, either on the lighting?
On the
question
lighting
that was
piece,
raised?
yeah, I was gonna address that. So we're meeting the trespass requirements of the city for the perimeter. And then we've definitely concentrated kind of our public areas to make sure those are well lit, and the building helps screen that from the surrounding properties.
Are those what they call the night lighting? Have I got that right terminology, where the light goes up instead of, dark sky instead of down? Is that what will be in the parking lot near her?
Yes, that's what I believe. Yep.
Is that also why the light poles are getting shorter? I noticed like behind CCC, they've gotten shorter. Is that to prevent the light from bleeding out, or is?
Our lights, excuse me, our light standard is that you can be no more than a half a foot candle across your property onto other people's properties.
So like
And
that-
so
that
that's
lady's
as a whole,
backyard.
when it's done, yeah, so on any adjacent neighbor's backyard, you won't see like a really bright light or anything like that. It's pretty dim, it's the light from a half a foot away from an actual candle, if it was in a dark room.
And is that still that dark night?
Dark sky.
Dark sky.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
our
Yeah.
code requires bright lights to be screened, so you don't see the bulb.
Perfect.
And shade down, don't shade up unless it's
Okay,
on like a
well, that
flag.
answers your question.
Anything else from the applicant? Okay, at this point, we will close the public hearing, and we will move on to deliberation and questions and comments from the commissioners. And my suggestion, unless any other commissioners agree, or disagree, we're being asked on the code interpretation for the conditional use and building frontage variance and building design standard variance. So we've got three topics. My suggestion would be that we hit them one at a time, start with the conditional use, kind of come to a head nod consensus on that, then move on to the next one. And once we get through all that, then we can entertain, hopefully we'll be able to entertain a motion to approve or disapprove, whatever, however the motion comes out on the whole package. Does that make
So
sense?
only one vote, but just discuss them
One
separately.
vote, but
Okay,
discussing
good.
them each at a time, just to
Okay.
try to kind of stay on track a little bit. Okay, so let's discuss the conditional use question.
You're saying conditional use of the interpretation?
Sorry, the code interpretation that a police station is an authorized, is a conditional use in the institutional zone. So it's a code
Equivalent to a fire
interpretation.
station, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's self-evident that it is. It's a light use and public safety. You know, what else you need to know?
What other uses are permitted either outright or conditionally in an institutional? You don't have to look them all up, just
Schools, government offices.
Bedroom.
I
Utilities.
honestly, I don't buy that a police station is the same as a fire station. There's 3 to 6 employees at a fire station. There's 40 at a police station. There's 1 police station. There's 4 fire stations. But if it's equivalent to any of the other industrial uses, then it seems reasonable.
Yeah,
Very institutional, rather.
schools, parks,
Yeah,
community
that's-
centers, public facilities, courts, libraries, government offices, conference facilities.
Sure, okay.
And other places in our code, they're parenthetically mentioned together.
Correct.
But they're not here, okay. Other comments? Comments or questions from commissioners?
No, I strike to move.
Do we have kind of a head nod that
Yeah.
we're in agreement on that one? Okay. That was quick. All right, we'll move on to the building frontage variance. Comments or concerns on that?
I think it's been well thought out, and they've done a great job of explaining it. I have no problem with it.
I feel the same.
The only problem I have with it is I don't think it's enough. I think because of cost factors and what have you, they've cut back on what I consider to be a building that ought to be larger and more consistent with the demands that are going to be put on this city in the next 50 years. So I think that somewhere down the line, we're going to be expanding that building. And I wish it could be what the chief I know he's not gonna say so, he's too much of a gentleman. But I don't think it meets the demands of what this community is demanding of our police department, and I wish it were a larger facility, but I'm gonna take what's been presented.
And I know they've tried to squeeze every dime
Yeah,
out of it
yeah.
that they can, and with the cost of construction, this is what the funding allows. And I agree with the other comments that have been made. You know, there's all the technical things that are in our code, and they're there for a reason. And the overriding reason on this one is that buildings, we want them to play to the street. And they've done a great job on this, even though it's the narrower face, it plays to the main street really well. So we got head nod on that as well.
In deference to what Bob said, I can't imagine the taxpayers paying more fees to have it bigger now. They can't see what Bob sees or know in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, we kind of do things that way.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to look 50 years.
Okay, so the third question, the second variance request, the third item is the building standards, which was the amount of transparency on the front. And then one thing I didn't hear discussed, and I was a little confused reading the report, was the border material on the bottom of the panels. Did I read that right? There was something about, there was supposed to be material along the,
So there's also a modification request for building materials. So our code requires when metal siding is used, that the bottom 2 feet has to be masonry of some sort, and that there needs to be trim. So, that's written for, metal, I think less aesthetically pleasing metal buildings. So they've requested a modification, and they have a modern design aesthetic, and they're using high quality metal material. And so, instead of handling that through a variance, staff felt that it was a modification that actually better met the standard, equally or better met the standard. And so, wouldn't require a variance, but just a finding that, this high quality building material still meets the intent of our building material standards because it is high quality and modern aesthetic. But the way our code is written for metal buildings doesn't really anticipate this modern kind of look,
okay.
if that makes sense.
I got a
Okay.
question.
Yes, sir.
Young lady, Laura Turway,
There's a young lady here.
how many hours have you put in with the chief and his staff, and your staff, in going over these variances? 2, half hour, 15 minutes, what?
There's been a lot of communication.
A lot of communication.
This is Kelly's report, so she's done a lot of
Interpret
it.
lotta, what's lotta mean? Hours,
More than one,
more than one?
yeah. No, I mean,
Over the days and months.
there's been a lot of communication because obviously it's on our site, but also, the same communication that we have with all applicants from a regulatory perspective.
You're asking me to make this decision from my point of view in 3 minutes? Easy. I think they've done a good job.
Yeah.
My take on this whole thing is administrative. I mean, I don't mean to poo-poo it, but, this is public safety we're talking about. This is a building that's gonna last 50 years. And we're talking about transparency and building materials that haven't got you guys riled up, that you seem to be satisfied with them. And therefore, I'm satisfied with it. Chief, are you satisfied with it?
Record's closed.
Okay.
Sorry.
Say that, I know timing's everything in comedy, but, say that again, I don't hear it.
Our record is
All right.
closed. You can choose to reopen it if you like.
Any other comments from the commissioners or questions? We got a nodding of head there. Okay.
I call for the question.
The one other, just
Yes.
wanted to remind, although I know you're going through them one by one, but there was the revised conditions of approval for your motion, and then there's also a recommendation to amend condition number 54 to end at the last part of the sentence, add the words "or pay a fee in lieu," to allow the fee in lieu for the undergrounding of utilities.
Okay, so we need the motion to state approval with conditions approval with the current conditions and with modified condition number 54.
To add the words "or pay a fee in lieu" at the end of the
Okay.
last sentence.
Anybody want to
I'll make the
tackle wording
motion, I
that?
guess, unless Bob wants to. I move that we, what's the word, agree? No, that we vote, approve GLUA-19-00011, general land use application.
You can just say that one if you
Okay,
like.
that whole thing, with the, what's the best way to put it, with
With
the condition
recommended conditions of approval
of
as
number
amended.
54. Is that correct?
Yep, with the recommended conditions of approval as amended, including the condition of approval change for number 54, adding the words "or pay a fee in lieu" at the end of the left first
Yeah, like
sentence.
everything she just said.
Is there a second?
I
Second.
second.
Who said it first?
Both.
Okay.
Second and third.
Seconded by Commissioner Mahoney. Okay, let's go to the vote.
Okay, Commissioner Stoll?
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
Aye.
Commissioner Schlangenhofer?
Aye.
Commissioner Gage?
Aye.
And Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
I better say aye and put it in a motion.
Go do it. We're all anxious for it.
Will this be done by the fall? This be done by the fall?
That's an easy question to answer.
Okay, we'll give the room a minute to clear here, and then we'll move on.
Last week, I came into the city commission meeting. I was freezing back there tonight. It's so warm in here. I think I better go sit back over there again where it was so cold. It's not only cold back there, it was cold up here at the last commission meeting.
Has anybody claimed the doors and windows in the old school
What?
as far as recycling? Is anybody gonna take the doors and try to use
Oh, that
them?
didn't come up.
She asked, the lady asked
Okay,
about it.
all right.
Recycles.
Yeah,
Yeah, are they being recycled?
well, Laura said she'll address that in her comments at the end.
All right, because that lady asked about it.
She's taking it to build her new home.
The school, do you want me to?
Who's getting the gymnasium? floor?
Okay, we will
Yeah.
move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is Historic Review Board policy changes. Ms. Reed, are you up again?
I am.
Oh, it's your night in the barrel.
It is. So I'm bringing you the HRB policy updates for your comment. So this is not a public hearing. You don't need to vote on anything tonight. The Historic Review Board adopts policies for alterations can be made to historic properties without Historic Review Board approval. So it's essentially a big list of things that you can do to your historic house without having to go before the Historic Review Board. Our code in chapter 1740 requires that any policy adoption by the board include opportunity for comment from the city commission and the planning commission. So that's why we're here. So the policies were first established in 1986. And this list of items is really meant to reflect what kind of changes are historically appropriate. If something is in question, it's not historically appropriate potentially, then it needs to go to the board. So there are 568 properties currently in the city that are regulated by the policies. Those include all properties within the Kenema National Register District, any locally designated properties within the McLaughlin Conservation District, and then we have a handful of, or a few dozen historic landmarks that are outside of the historic districts. So we would like to update the policies. It's been on the Historic Review Board's work plan for a couple of years because there are some gray areas. Some of the policies lack detail or they're open to too much interpretation. They don't really give good guidance to these historic property owners. And we need those policies to be clear and objective. The second reason is that there are a lot of new modern products out there that weren't around 30 years ago. And we get questions all the time of, can I use Trex decking? Or, can I put this new window, can I use this new window material? And the policies don't address any of those new modern materials. Also, we're adding a new policy for solar installations on historic properties. So currently, we've had a few properties that have gone to the board for requests to add solar panels to the roof. And we wanted to be able to put some sideboards around solar panel installations that could be installed without board approval. Some of them would still have to come before the board if they're on the front of a building, for example. So just looking at our comprehensive plan, just to kind of give you a little background, one of our goals and policies in our comp plan is to encourage the preservation of historic structures. But policy 537 mentions that we want to allow the structure to be used in an economically viable manner. So I think that these policies speak directly to that, right? Allowing people to kind of do what they need to do to their properties and make them livable, but also preserve our historic structures. So we went through a robust public process. We started in October of last year. We held multiple work sessions. We reviewed National Park Service guidance from the Secretary of Interior, who administers the National Register of Historic Places. We looked at other jurisdictions, best practices. We gathered a lot of community input, held an open house. We visited the McLaughlin and Kenema neighborhoods, put a bunch of announcements out over email in the trail news on the city website, and we also had an online survey. So now we have a draft set of policies, and we're gathering comment from City Commission, Planning Commission, and the State Historic Preservation Office. We've already heard comment from City Commission earlier this month. The State Historic Preservation Office has reviewed the policy changes and signed off on them with one minor change that we've made. After that, the Historic Review Board would adopt the policy changes in a public hearing, which is actually scheduled for tomorrow. And then the City Commission would adopt them by resolution next month.
So this came before the city commission before it became before the planning?
Right, because it just worked out with timing of the hearings. So because this is not a land use application or a legislative hearing, the order of it doesn't matter. So we're just soliciting comments from the Planning Commission and the City Commission.
The only reason I ask, if the city commission has already discussed it and they're gonna vote on it, what do we have for input for them if they've already discussed it?
Well, the Historic Review Board actually has the ultimate authority. We're asking the City Commission to bless the policies by adopting them by resolution next month, not by ordinance.
All right.
Who has the ultimate authority?
It's really the Historic Review Board.
Above the
Yeah.
city commission?
For these policies, not for these are not codified, so it's not part of our code, it's a separate policy. So the code provides that the Historic Review Board may adopt its own policies with comment from the public, or from the City Commission and the Planning Commission.
So our comments tonight, they may still consider our comments in
Tomorrow.
their decision?
Exactly.
What about public comments? Can they still?
Public comments as well, of course, yeah. So it's all in the public record. We've had multiple public comments already, and if we receive any tonight or tomorrow at the Historic Review Board meeting, we can react to those and make changes.
Great.
Why am I asking that? I wasn't trying to contradict anything. It just seems strange to me. The HRB is not voted on by the public, it's appointed by the mayor, but the city commission has the vote. And I thought, how is the HRB higher than the commission to make the decisions on those things?
I mean, the city commission is ultimate authority. They delegated this to the HRB. If in fact the city commission thought a particular policy was bad, what they could do was change the process. So ultimately, the city commission can do it. But what they've done is delegated to the HRB saying, you can adopt these policies for decisions, to make simple decisions to staff. And, just make sure you let us know what they are and we can give you input, and the planning commission give you input, but the HRB adopts the policies.
I see.
And in this case, we haven't done it before, but I would like to take the policies to the city commission for a resolution, so there is more process related to them.
I see, okay.
So more process and more opportunity for public
Just
comment.
needed to get it
That way, it's
through the
clear
brain.
that there's a resolution that also adopts them, even
my
though they have the authority.
inclination, pardon me for interrupting, my inclination is, for every committee that's appointed by the mayor and authorized by the commission, just let them do their job. Right? just let them do their job.
I understand that, but the things that are supposedly intense to neighborhoods, I thought the city commission makes those decisions. I didn't know.
Well, I understand, Tom, and I've asked myself that question too. It seems on the face of it, there's a contradiction in the process, you know? But, and it might need some tweaking in terms of, ultimately, it seemed to me that, you know, the commission has got the ultimate authority to override unless,
Yeah.
unless.
Okay.
But that's my
I was just
inclination.
wondering, wasn't disagreeing at all.
And when was all this discussed before? Was it last year? A lot of this is new to me.
I think it's new to a lot of people.
The Historic Review Board has been discussing these policies since October.
Of last year.
And then they did an update to the
But it
city
didn't come
commission.
before the planning commission.
No, and it's still not before the planning commission. It's more of an FYI, and it's accepting
Yeah,
comment.
we don't have any kind of a role.
We have no
in this.
authority.
No,
No, you don't.
Not on this.
Yeah,
We
no.
can make comment.
Comments.
I think if you have specific real concerns, I would expect the HRB to want to listen to
Wanna
it
listen,
seriously.
Yeah.
Okay.
But don't things having to do with Kenema and McLaughlin often come before us?
No,
They don't, okay. I thought
Never.
we've heard stories about Kenema and the complaints here during the citizen
oh,
comments.
well, the things that come before you would be like, if someone wanted to do a multifamily building in Kenema, or if someone needed a type 3 natural resource overlay district, or something like that would come to you. Historic Review Board, their decisions never go to Planning Commission, they just go, they make the final decisions, and then they are appealable to the city
So
commission. So it
land use
depends what you're talking
decisions
about.
go before the HRB? I mean, I've heard a lot
They
of
do.
stuff online about a bunch of little small homes being built up in Kenema, and I thought, well, that didn't come before us, how did it get approved in a historic district? Things like that, and I wonder,
It goes
did Vice
before,
pass us?
yeah, they're the final decision maker for new construction historic districts, just like you're the final decision maker for the hearing tonight.
So even if it's land use, it can skip us and go to HRB?
It's not skipping you, it's not even, you're not even involved with it. It's,
see.
if it's Historic Review Board, you're not delegated that authority.
So if people disagree with HRB, then they take it to city commission, not to us?
Correct, just like if they disagree with you, they take it to the city commission with an appeal there too.
All right,
Yeah,
I understand.
so it's just two separate boards.
Okay.
Laura, the ultimate authority in allowing something to happen in Kenema would be the occupancy permit, would it not? That they've met all the rules and regulations of that district?
Yes, it's if the property owners wants to do something with their property, they're the ultimate authority, and it's up to the city to make sure that all the departments and all the requirements are checked off before we issue the occupancy permit.
So if a person already lived in the house and they wanted to make some modifications and they met all the specs, do they have to get a building permit if there's no alteration in the structure? It's just,
It depends, but probably yes. Come talk to us anyway, because you might need, if you're in a historic district, we would encourage you to talk to Kelly to make sure that you meet our standards for our Historic Review Board, and same with building permits. What I like about these policies are that, you know, someone doesn't have to pay $50 and go before a public hearing to maintain their home, which is what we want of them. We want them to, invest in their historic structures. And so this is just an easier step to kind of wind back some of that process and fees, where they can just, you know, they want to do something, it's on the list says it's okay, they can just meet with Kelly signs off on it, and then she signs off on the building permit component of it.
The reason I ask some of these questions, and Bob and to the fellow commissioners, is that I sit through a lot of city commission meetings, and I hear a lot of disruption and people upset about fences being out in the right of way in Kenema, or building, as I said, those 3 small homes or whatever it was, I don't know, but I hear a lot of complaints coming before them, but I never see that once they get to the city commission and someone comes here, then do they send them to HRB and then HRB makes a decision? But there seems to be a lot of discomfort in the Kenema about some of these things that are going on, like the fencing and stuff like that. And I don't know how it ever gets resolved.
It depends on what the issue is, and what its review is. If it's something in the right of way, that is a different process than a new building or historic stuff. things
Because I
like
know
that.
I've heard him say, well, Public Works, no, send them to planning, send them to, and you hear all these different things, and I never hear how they get resolved. Okay.
Okay. And, you know, one reason why it's great to be very clear with these policies is that a lot of these, this work is some stuff that doesn't require a building permit. So there's no reason for somebody to come and get a permit and ask the city, if it's okay to do X, Y, or Z. So it's, you know, these are difficult, for us to check sometimes. So really, it's about outreach, getting the word out. We reach out to all of our historic property owners frequently, and whenever we have change in property ownership, we get that information from the tax assessor, and we send a kind of welcome packet to the new historic property owner that includes these policies. So hopefully when people move into a new home that's historic, they understand what they can and can't
Is it
do.
kind of like an HOA?
Who to
You get that documentation at signing or afterwards?
No, we just do that voluntarily as a city to help communicate these policies so people know that they exist.
So before they buy a home in a historic district, I mean, I know in some of our areas, we have to get the documents for an HOA and be familiar with them. But someone can buy a home and make plans that they're gonna do this and that, and they don't know until after they've moved in that it's in a
Well,
historic?
Real estate agents are required to inform people.
That person should have done their due diligence.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I thought I did with my home, but I didn't,
Yeah,
obviously.
the city doesn't track the purchase or sale of buildings within our city.
Okay, I thought it might be like an HOA in a district. Okay, yeah, thanks.
So I'm going to go through and summarize quickly the policies and speak to kind of the input that we heard from the community about some of these. So first one that we're amending is HRB policy number 3, repair or replacement of siding. Currently, the policy calls for wood siding. We have a lot of questions about fiber cement. We also allow fiber cement or hardy plank siding on new construction in the district. The Historic Review Board frequently approves the use of fiber cement on new buildings. And so what the board drafted up is to add that fiber cement siding is permitted on accessory buildings only, so a detached garage or shed, new or existing, and on the non-contributing structures in Kenema. So Kenema is made up of many structures that are historic designated contributing to the district, built within the period of 1850 to 1928 with architectural integrity intact. And then many structures were built after 1928 and aren't contributing really to the character of the district. And so we have that list, and we would allow fiber cement on those non-contributing structures, as we do with new construction in Kenema. HRB policy number 6, fences and walls. We're proposing to add definitions and photos of all of our fence types. So we just currently have a list that says, you know, brick, iron picket, wood picket, but we're providing photo examples of those and descriptions to just add some clarity for folks. We're adding 4 new fence types permitted in front yards and 4 new types permitted in side and rear yards based on the input that we heard from folks. Policy number 10 for window repair and replacement. So we wanted to hear from folks about fiberglass clad wood windows, which are a newer product, all fiberglass windows and wood plastic blend windows that one brand is Fibrex, if you've heard of that. So the current policy encourages window repair rather than replacement, because historic wood windows are, we want to preserve those if at all possible. And then if it's not possible, we would change the policy to allow fiberglass clad wood and aluminum clad wood windows on historic structures. And then on non-contributing structures in Kenema. And on accessory structures, we would allow fiberglass or wood plastic blend as well. And, you know, the input that we heard from folks, it was pretty split. So a lot of people said, this should be allowed, period, for everyone. And then we heard a lot of folks saying not at all. And then a lot of people in the middle as well. And so we kind of took the middle road for a lot of these new policies.
Before you move on, how many people were surveyed for that? I mean, I've heard a lot of people, we didn't get a survey on Kenema, even though it was asked, and I'm just interested in on those stats. What does that represent? How
Yeah,
many people? And
well-
the only Kenema neighborhood in McLaughlin?
It was Kenema and McLaughlin, and so what we did was, we had an open house, and we had the survey in paper form available at the open house, and then we posted the same survey online.
Were they duplicated?
They were the same survey.
I mean, could people vote in both, submit and also vote online?
I suppose they could. There's no way for us to track that online. We sent a postcard out to every property owner in Kenema in the district, and to every historic property owner in McLaughlin and then the landmarks, advertising the open house and the survey, the website link.
I know that some people are so adamant, they probably would have voted 25 times if they had the right to.
Well, I think we only got about 30 total responses.
30, so
Yeah.
those results up there are 30.
Yeah. So, you know, really because we didn't have a whole slew of people, you know, responding and we didn't get a ton of public comments, I think what that told us is that the policies are mostly fine as is. So a lot of it's not changing. And we're only changing a few minor things to add a little bit of flexibility for people who actually don't own historic homes, but they're in the district, or people who, you know, want to build a detached garage and don't want to have to use wood windows on it.
So the stats, both McLaughlin and Kenema combined?
This is everybody.
Only 30
Yeah.
responded?
Right.
And how many neighborhoods or homes do we have in both? We probably
There are
have more than-
we advertised it to 568, and then
And
we
we only had
also,
30 responses.
right, and we
Wow.
also put it on the website and announced it on social media, and yeah, we really tried to get the word out.
Wow, okay.
I had a quick question about the windows. In the open house, were window manufacturers invited in to explain energy efficiency,
So-
wood window relevance today? Or
We
where
didn't
did your,
hear from manufacturers, but I did go out and get product samples and bring them to the open house and to some of the work sessions. I spoke with window repair contractors and like salespeople for new windows. And then we had some public comments that dealt with windows as well.
did you speak to anybody that builds wooden windows, like
Yes.
historical wooden windows?
There's a local business here down on 99. I think it's called
Wood feathers?
Chosen
No,
Wood
that's right,
Windows.
that's
And so when we spoke with them, we didn't get anything in writing from them, but we spoke with
Okay,
them.
because what I'm seeing is it looks like they're trying to push modern technology for the, well, because it looks like a wooden window, but it's more energy efficient and it lasts. But I was just wondering if there was any scientific reason for pushing it or if it was just easier to install the windows instead of trying to preserve because wood still has relevance. You can still
Sure.
do storm windows, you
Yeah.
can still.
And wood is allowed, right?
Of course, yeah.
Now, is it preferred? Do you push the wood or do you really have no
So
care either way?
what the policy has strong language encouraging repair and restoration of original wood windows. And we have a grant program that actually pays for that as well. A matching grant program that the Historic Review Board awards property owners, and window repair is one of the most common grant applications we get.
Right.
So when people come to me and say, hey, what can I do about my windows? I personally, as staff, always tell them about the grant program and encourage window repair.
Okay.
But we're allowing choices, for people when
Right.
they do want to replace windows.
Yeah, sometimes people don't know, they'll hire a window replacement contractor and they will push a retrofit just because it's easy and they can order them and they can have a guy with limited skills install it and it meets the criteria, even though it wasn't the only, relevant possible way to do it.
I've spoken about communications for a long time, everybody knows about that, but I swear, if you send out a postcard now saying, we've decided to go with no windows or just plastic, you'll probably get more than 30. All it takes is some little controversy, and all of a sudden, everybody will come out and start making comments. Why weren't we told? Why weren't we asked? Even though you did all those efforts.
Yeah, so wood windows would still be required on historic structures. And it's the accessory structures and the non-contributing structures which would be allowed to use the fiberglass, or the blend. And the board did look at product samples to make sure that they looked high quality and, still kind of, there's kind of a line between the fiberglass and then vinyl windows, which are never allowed, in the district or on, and there's one exception for that is when you have a building that was originally built with vinyl windows or aluminum windows, like something in the 60s or 70s before we had a historic review board, and they want to replace their windows, that's the only time when we would allow vinyl.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Porches and decks, this policy, so this started because we get asked about composite materials like Trex decking. And so the policy would require historic review board for any new front porches, whether they're wood or composite, allow staff review for a new rear deck or porch, and then allow composite decking materials on a rear deck or porch and for any detached decks.
What do you mean by detached?
So if it's not attached to the house, and it's,
It could be that far away from the house. I mean, I've got a deck that I built on the back of my house and it's that far away from the house, but it's not attached.
yeah, well, we did add a caveat that any detached decks that this would only be allowed on detached decks that are in the side or rear yard. So if somebody wants to put something in their front or their corner yard, the composite decking wouldn't be allowed.
Okay. How much weight did you give to those who, it seems like there's a lot of them, never allow this, never allow that? Did you look more at the allow in some cases or outright, and since it was minimal for
Well,
11% of 30 is not very big.
Yeah, so I mean, the vast majority of people said that that composite decking should be allowed in some cases or all the time. So the board landed on some cases.
Okay. I've just been watching the never allow through almost all these slides.
I know, yeah. It's probably the same two
I have a
people.
feeling I know who those people are.
Okay, and last, we're adding in the new policy for solar technology. So this would require historic review board to look at anything that's on a front or street facing or a highly visible location. So staff review would be permitted for panels that are on a rear roof or a side roof that are minimally visible. And also that panels are compatible with the roof color and that they're low profile. Some of the modern panels actually are, they blend in quite well and they only stick out about 4 inches from the surface of the roof. So this is the board's proposal. Tomorrow, we'll be reviewing all the comments received by the City Commission, SHPO, and Planning Commission. And then, as we talked about, the City Commission adoption by resolution. Also, a legislative file will be coming your way later on. Our Chapter 1740 is was written a long, long time ago and hasn't been changed a lot. So it actually includes two different sections that talk about HRB policies, and those two sections conflict with each other. So we, because we're now talking about HRB policies, we thought it would be appropriate to fix that inconsistency in the code and just strike the one of those sections so that we don't have any contradictions. And then, of course, we need to get the word out to all our property owners. We actually have an intern for the summer that has been hired to help us do that. So, she'll be designing brochures and web pages to help explain all of this to our property owners.
On the get the word out to property owners, that's Keneva and McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Do you have access to emails through the neighborhood associations in which to send out to all those people so they?
We send to the neighborhood chairs and then they decide to send it on if they want to.
if they want to. So, in other words, it's hard to reach all those people to let them know that these things are changing.
We've reached out by mail directly to
Well, I know
everybody.
you do
yeah.
your best, is what
Yeah.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's such a shame that we don't have emails for some of those neighborhood associations like we do. in
No,
ours.
they do for the neighborhood associations, but they don't have for all the people that live in the neighborhood association.
That's true. I
So it
mean,
goes to the chair.
we have a
Part of the
place we've been
responsibility of the
gathering
chair is
emails
to
for a
notify
long
the
time.
people of the
Yeah,
email.
we've been trying to gather them from everybody. If you want to get notified what changes are taking place, give us your email. We won't give it to anybody else. But if you want to know, you better give us that.
Yeah.
You know, there's something on the horizon that's taken place with this younger generation that, for God's sakes, has taken the federal government to court on environmental conditions
Yep,
and
saw that on the
climate
news.
change. And I maintain that within the next 10 years, our codes and comprehensive plans will be modified because of what's happening in our climate change.
Yep.
Now, you look at our, what's happening in Seaside and some of those coastal communities because of the anticipated threat of tsunamis.
Yep.
Seaside's moving a high school up into the high ground.
In the hills, yeah.
And that's gonna take some modification of their comp plan
Yep.
and things like that. So it's coming our way, folks. And I'll tell you, historical review neighborhoods are the least of my concern when it comes to that, okay? I mean, you put your window anywhere you want to.
Yeah.
Okay, what I'd like to do, if it's all right with the other commissioners, is we have 2 public comments. We'll take those and then we'll go through any comments that discuss that all of us
This
have.
isn't going to take any motion tonight, is it?
No,
It's just a.
no, because we don't really have a role in this. We're being
that's
asked
what
to
I thought.
advise.
I see that.
We have a role to advise.
But that's all.
Only to narrow the comments that you want us to provide.
Right, okay. All right, so can we have Paul Edgar and Mackenzie Strawn come up?
At the same time?
Good, that's fine. There's only 2. Doesn't take that much time to do it one at a time.
Thank you. Paul Edgar. I live in an 1889 vernacular house that we completely rebuilt that was great-grandmother's originally, so it's been in the family, under single-family ownership for greater than 130 years. When the baton was put on my shoulder and my wife and I accepted this opportunity to do it, we were moving from a 3,500 square foot house to 12. We made a little add-on to it, but it's important when you think about this, that in a historic district, and I sit on the Clackamas County Historic Review Board, I adjudicate these things in other cases, in other environments. But with a historic building, and ours is considered to be a contributing historic house, that if you make an add-on to it, you can't make it modern because it would not be compatible. But it is this criteria in mindset of compatibility, which is so important. Because the whole district has National Historic Places status. So it's the same as McLaughlin House. It has the same criteria of judgment on the whole district, and that includes everything within the boundary of what was established for this historic district. So when we get into things like this, in my house, I put in a whole lot of new windows, all wood, all 4/4 light. And I went to Wooddell Windows, and I had a place that specializes in making wood windows that are low E, with all of the shadow lines and everything. You can't tell the difference between the original windows, which I have in the house that I did not change out, and the new windows. And you can do that. And now the question really comes along is when we change some of this codes, and LUBA came back and said that our building guidelines now have the same code responsibilities. And within our building guidelines, we have certain things which are saying you can approve or not approve. So like somebody said, fences, a stockade style fence is listed in our code as saying not acceptable, not approvable. So we have, and so there are certain types of fences and things like this. So, but there's little things which are important. And so the question is we had one of the things there was composite siding, hardy planks. They don't have a hardy style that has, here's the profile of what you call a Dutch lap. This is actually cedar, finger jointed cedar, completely primed. And you buy it, and one of my neighbors right down the street, down on 4th and Miller, just is reciting a very historic house, and he used this exact material, and when you look at it, it looks like the original. Now, the next question comes back is when we introduce new designs into a whole district that has historic places status, what is acceptable? Does it detract from the whole? And when I read the reports of what is acceptable, and there was recommendations made in a 2010 grouping of leaders from across the state, which were historic preservation oriented people, they talk about this. And we should, I think that there actually should be a continuance of this hearing or discussion, because I would love for every one of you to read, as an example, why Kenema is a National Register Historic District. Because there is a document that's available, and it's in this report that's, that Kelly has put together for you. And it's our nomination document. And in that nomination document, there's a statement of significance. And that's critical because it sets the tone of why the National Park Service, the Department of Interior, has established a district like this and given it historic places status, the same as McLaughlin House. And we are taking steps away from that. And do we need to? And should they, how lenient or how subjective can we or should we be when we are making thousands of tiny cuts that in the long period destroy the relevance and the reasons for even having a National Historic District? We have a statement in there about mass. All of a sudden we build a house, one that got approved subjectively, that has an elevator in it. Okay, in Kenema. And historically, in the realm of what we compare or view on, when we're making a judgmental call, we're not looking at all the houses in the whole area, we're looking at the contributing houses that are part of the National Register District. So somehow, somewhere, we've got to this point where we don't even care about mass. We don't care about siding. We don't care about windows. We don't care about leveling off, massive recontouring. All of those things are part of saying in our codes that we shouldn't be doing, but yet we open barn door. And all I'm asking for is before we start throwing open the barn door and destroying the relevance of a National Register Historic District, and there's only two of them in all of Clackamas County. One is Kenema, the other is Willamette.
McLaughlin? No?
Not McLaughlin, is a conservation district.
Okay.
Okay.
They need you to wrap
Okay, anyway, I wrote a deal to SHPO, and I asked for guidance. And the guidance was in and around the questions of relevance of how do we judge things. And I would love very much for all of you guys to read it, understand it, and know the reasons why. Here's somebody that has a little bit more knowledge about this than 99%, would even be asking SHPO for guidance. But it's this thing about, are we going to destroy or alter the relevance of having our National Historic District. And little things like profile. Are we going to say that a profile is important in creating windows or views? And are we going to change that profile so we can say hardy plank is okay, flat, without any profile whatsoever?
Paul, I've let you go way over your time. If you have something you want to provide to Kelly.
I have actually given this type of material directly to Kelly.
Yes, the articles.
The article.
Yes.
If you give it to her and she'll get it to us.
He sent it to us this evening and she forwarded it to your emails.
Okay.
I had sent it with the request to have it forwarded direct to you guys so that you could read it and assess it yourself.
And we'll do that. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Mackenzie Strawn.
If you'll forgive me, I'm not an orator.
Please introduce yourself.
Sorry, my name is Mackenzie Strawn. I live in Sublimity. I own and operate Staten Wood Windows, and I have an interest in maintaining historic architectural details in this region. As I said before, I'm not an orator, and I'll be reading this off my phone. I am here to represent a growing number of fervent, hardworking local small business owners and craftspeople who support and deal in what has come to be called traditional window making. We have built our lives and careers on developing skills and tools needed to reproduce wood windows in the same manner our predecessors who built this town and region from the mid-1800s through the 1960s. We believe, as the evidence supports, traditional Douglas fir windows are the longest lasting and most responsible window product available today. The fact that there are windows in use built over 100 years ago in the same manner from the same materials as we build our windows today is the strongest evidence that traditional wood windows are best. Our concerns regarding potentially wholesale allowing aluminum clad or fiberglass windows are one, mostly not produced locally and exclusively produced by major window manufacturers, which ultimately means less money from their production remains in the community. The windows we make have remained fundamentally unchanged for over 100 years. We can readily and easily reproduce any part from a traditional window built 100 years ago. Fiberglass and aluminum clad windows, since they appeared on the market, have gone through consistent and predictable changes. Therefore, if one looks even 10 years into the future, we know from experience the prospect of being able to reproduce a part of an aluminum clad or fiberglass window, especially locally, is next to impossible. Major window manufacturers claim to offer lifetime warranties for their products, but if you examine the fine print, you will usually find lifetime means 10 years from installation date transferable to a new owner, and most recent census data shows that less than 40% of people remain in a home longer than 10 years. Major window manufacturers have explicitly stated over the last 20 years their goal is to have the public view windows as a consumable, replaceable product in the same manner as any other household appliance. 20 years ago, there was very little expert window knowledge, traditional window knowledge among craftspeople in the area, but in recent years, as a response to the need in the market and frankly a love of traditional architectural, local craftsmanship and our communities, the ability to match and restore historic wood windows is readily available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Comments, information that we want to pass on to the HRB for their review tomorrow night?
You know, until I've read some of the reports that Paul sent in, I'm not willing to say I agree or disagree for the meeting tomorrow night. I want to read it more and understand this more, to be honest. I need more information.
I had a question for Mackenzie. I'm not sure if you can answer it.
Come on back.
Ask away, come on back.
As far as the energy efficiency of wood windows, how did it compare? Do you know? With a storm window type of situation?
I'm not a scientist either. When you we make it with the same glass as is available commercially.
Double glazed?
Yeah, or as you said, storm window. So if you understand U factors, which is the, I'm sorry, I'm not a scientist and I'm not prepared, I didn't write anything down. A U factor is like in the building code would be called, I'm sorry. In new construction, you're asked for a 0.3 U factor, and a single pane window without a storm window would be given a 0.8, which is 0.3 to 0.8 is less than 1 unit of how they measure that. So in my opinion, not very much difference between a double pane window and a single pane window.
I was just wondering, with modern building codes, would a wooden window be able to meet energy efficiency codes? Do you know? If someone wanted to build a new home, put them in?
Well, I think it has more to do with how many layers of glass there are rather than the frame material, is that correct?
Is that pretty much where the loss is, the glass?
Yeah.
Right, and so in the frame material, wood, as I understand it, outperforms everything else.
Too.
Yeah.
So is that why they clad wood? Because the wood is an insulation value? I'm not sure.
In my understanding, the reason for cladding is to eliminate the need for maintenance over that initial 10-year period.
Okay.
My car's more than 10 years old.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate your expertise. Other comments?
Paul, are you going to address the HRB tomorrow night? Can I ask?
I would encourage you to not
we don't wanna get into
speak
it,
direct,
okay.
I mean, unless you
If
want
he's going to
to.
be there to make his comments, that's all I'm concerned about, because I.
Well, I can tell you that there is more, so there's been many opportunities for comments, and there will continue to be more opportunities for comments, both at Historic Review Board tomorrow night, but then also we'll go back to the City Commission with the resolution, and there'll be that hearing as well.
So this isn't the final, okay? But the city's
No,
not.
you're not, it's just a,
But on July 17th, the city's adopting the resolution.
that's our tentative schedule to have a resolution for the City Commission's consideration, which is the Historic Review Board
Because I
policies.
note that Paul had mentioned that should be a continuance. That's not by us. That's for either HRB or City Commission, I would presume.
Right.
Yeah, this isn't
We have-
a
we have
public
nothing-
hearing,
Yeah,
it's
we
just
have nothing
comment.
to do with that, okay?
Right.
Anyway.
Any other
I don't have
comments?
Any comments?
Okay. Communications.
Oh, she's got it
All
passed up.
right. So I am pleased to announce that we've had the first reading of the majority of the code amendments by the City Commission. And that was at the end, just this last City Commission hearing. And so they'll consider the second reading of the code amendments, including equitable housing, on July 3rd. Also on July 3rd, we have a work session scheduled between the Planning Commission and the City Commission. It's from 6 to 7 p.m. and it'll discuss the height limits in the mixed use downtown. Going back to the first topic about the code amendments, the City Commission decided on everything within the code package, but they did pull out some items to be discussed or further refined, and that includes short-term housing rentals, shelters, height in MUD, and it also included permanent food carts in mixed-use downtown as well. Also, we know that we need to solve those issues, but we also know that we did such a big package of code amendments that there might be some places where we need to further clarify, or if we made an error or something like that. And so we'll be coming back at the beginning of September with updates. So if there's something we missed, we'll figure it out, and then we can change it at that time that we're doing these leftover items as well. So the official ruling or first reading was an approval for a majority of the amendments and a continuance till September 3rd, I believe, for the remaining items. And that's all I have.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
I got one thing.
Yes, sir.
We look at these code amendments and we're talking about equitable housing. And really what we're suggesting underneath the surface of things is affordable housing. And equitable housing and affordable housing don't necessarily operate on the same strata. We're comparing apples to oranges. And one of the things that always amazed me is if you go get a building permit in this city and look at the systems development charges that you're confronted with and ask yourself, my goodness gracious, if I didn't have to pay those fees, I could afford to build a house in Oregon City. The systems development fees are gonna at least 20% of the cost of, you might as well add that into cost of labor and cost of materials, system development fees. And the reason the city does that is to survive. To survive, it keeps them, their head above water, you know? But let's not fool ourselves, you know? I'm all for looking at it and evaluate it and analyzing it and what have you. But to equate homelessness and the cost of living, or the cost of building a home, and leave out system development fees, we're kidding ourselves, we're fooling ourselves. And now that's the last person you want to fool, is yourself, really.
I agree with Bob, and I've been saying that since we first started talking about these. I don't know if we'll ever get to affordable housing. I mean, beyond just the fees, any developer who buys a property and pays for all the labor and all this stuff, even if we split a house in half, someone's gonna charge as much for that half as they did for their half to cover their mortgage. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get back to affordable housing unless we have such a deep recession again, which I hope never again. If anybody can afford it, our next generation, I don't know how they're gonna afford our homes. And it's just too expensive, and no one's gonna charge. All those new homes that were built up Holcomb Boulevard, supposed to be affordable housing, and they were all over 600,000 along that airstrip up there. And you can bet all the homes that are built in Park Place are gonna cost a lot because of development, not just the fees, but just the cost and how much they want for their lands that they bought. So I
One of
agree
the
with
other
Bob.
things that we're fooling ourselves about is
Yes.
we see the homeless people in the streets, and we think those poor people can't afford to buy a house. No, they can't afford to afford mental health
Yeah, you're right.
treatment.
Yeah.
We're shooting ourselves in the foot.
And they can't afford to rent anywhere
That's
because the
right.
rents are all up, so.
But we've gotta treat those people for mental health and decriminalize their situation,
I agree.
and that would get them off the streets. But we've got an elephant in the room at the state level that won't let them do that. It's called PERS.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? We're adjourned.